We had a blast setting it up, and we changed something every time, which is what's most exciting.
Oh, I'm telling you, Leah, the first, like, when I first came over here, he already had some stuff set up. And then every time I'd come over, the first, like, even still now, he'd be like, wait till you see the changes. I'm like, what else could you have changed?
We're always trying to optimize things.
Nice.
That's what it is.
Yeah, my son, my second son, is very into music and stuff, and he tried to seal off his room
Oh, yeah?
from
Like soundproofing?
Sound panels,
exactly.
yeah,
And, I don't know. I don't know if it works. He hardly ever gets out of his room though.
Is he? Well, how old is he?
17.
Okay, he's like, so he's kind of like, want to come out for dinner now?
Nope. Exactly.
Bring it to me.
Cocoon.
Yep.
It's living in his cocoon.
That's funny, man. That's funny. I don't think I was ever like that because I always used to get like, I would be in my room for a little bit, and I'm like so much of a social butterfly. I'd be like, I can't do this. I gotta get out. Ugh.
It was like punishment being in your room too long, probably.
Well,
for you, Cole.
I remember a couple times I got in a fight with my parents, and they were like, my mom was like, well, you're grounded for 2 weeks. And I'd be like, make it 3. And she'd make it 4. And I'd be like, make it 8. I don't care. Right. And then I'm like, literally, I'd be in my room for like 2. I'd get home from school and go to my room. Yeah. I'd regret that immediately. But do you want to get this started?
Stories. Yeah, let's go for it, man. I'm excited.
Go ahead. You go ahead and introduce it.
Alrighty. Well, I'll kick things over to you, but I'll kick things off.
Let it flow this way.
Yes,
We'll
sir.
flow towards the room.
Alrighty, welcome back everyone to another episode of Unscripted Exchanges. This is going to be by far the best episode. I'm feeling great things today. We've got an exciting guest coming on, but I'll let Cole do the official introduction.
You made me feel special when you say it like that. You're full of energy today.
I am. I had to turn up my energy for you.
Ready to go. Well, thank you guys for joining us for another episode. I am your co-host, Cole. As Hayden mentioned, I do think this is going to be the most valuable, in terms of content, engagement, just stuff like that. I think there's
Wisdom.
there's a feeling in the room, wisdom, experience. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Leo Chan. He is currently the executive director of the Midwest Chinese Chamber of Commerce. He has an unbelievable story and background ranging from telecom to finance and investing to technology ventures. I mean, the list goes on, but Leo has been a mentor of mine since I started my own company, and he's just been a great friend and resource. Thanks for you're clapping for him. You hear that? You like that? So without further ado, I just say thank you, Leo. If you would like to introduce yourself, hopefully hit some stuff.
Sure. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. Really, Cole, you're just really exaggerating a little bit.
Oh, come on.
What I can do. Really, I'm just the executive director of a nonprofit organization here in the Midwest, and we're just trying to serve as a bridge between our region and the rest of the world. Most, of course, trying to focus on the East Asia area, but that's what we're doing right now as a nonprofit. But before that, yes, I did start my career in banking, commercial banking, working for a French bank and then a Chinese bank, and then moved on in the tech industry, and then made a comeback to the financial industry. Started some venture capital and a couple funds in Asia.
So you've done a lot.
Yeah,
You've done a lot.
I would say I've been to a lot of places and I met a lot of people, and I think I have some stories that might be interesting, and that's all.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So thank you for introducing yourself, Leo. I think it's always a tough question when I introduce you, you're like, yeah, okay, yeah, this is me. But we're just excited to have you on today.
Thank you.
And I know we've got some questions to throw at you that I think that will create a lot of value. So without further ado, I'll let Hayden kind of jump into a couple questions he's got, and we'll kind of rock it.
Sounds like a plan. And once again, Leo, thank you for coming on. This is going to be an awesome episode. So I did a little bit of homework, just trying to learn more about, who you are. Obviously, you introduced yourself, but definitely want to dig a little bit deeper. I see you've got a lot of background in finance, startup, technology, etc. and I see that you've co-founded a couple of technology startups. What would you say has been like your most favorite and why?
Of course, the most favorite one is probably the ones that are still running.
Sure.
Because a lot of people that have done some research in this industry probably already knew that the survival rate for startups are extremely low, and 90 some percent actually would die in the first angel rounds, and then the VC before they can make it to the VC rounds. We One of the things that I'm very interested in is always agriculture technology, and the way that we saw everything, how the entire world going through different waves of technological innovations, and brought a lot of great things really to our day-to-day life. But then a lot of times we tend to forget, what's the most important part of our life, and that is keeping agriculture going in an efficient way, and hopefully, we can feed more people. So the my favorite startup would be specifically that, and we actually had a tech startup in southern China that uses drones to spread fertilizers and actually predict what the weather is going to be like, and what the crops will actually need, and then have the drones go out there and spread the fertilizers, or, well, in some cases pesticides as well, just to make sure the crops can grow fast and healthily, and produce higher yields.
That's awesome. Now, when you mention these drones, these probably aren't your average little drones that you can buy at like Best Buy. These are probably some heavy duty commercial drones.
Yeah, they are heavy duty ones. They can lift up to anywhere between 30 to even 50, 60 pounds of pesticides or fertilizers, and then be able to, intelligently tell which areas that actually needs them, and be, put on a schedule to do so automatically.
That's absolutely fascinating. Now, are there
I can't
like
remember, but Cole, did you actually see it?
Oh, I think we were planning on seeing it when we were there. We got some pictures of them.
Yep.
These things were like huge. I mean, they were like really industrial grade
right?
drones. They were cool.
Now, is it just a couple handful, or are there like hundreds of these covering like acres?
Well, what we try to do is we try to make it into a business model that the farmers can actually can also benefit from. As we know, the agriculture is being done differently in different countries and different cultures. In the case of Asia, there's a lot of terrains that are not, friendly to large harvesters or large machineries to go in and do everything all at once. So it's actually quite common that the each village actually has its own sort of operators, and we try to make a business case for a, let's say, a two-man crew to go in and drive a minivan, and then bring all these industrial grade drones to do a operation once a day or a couple times a day.
Yep.
Right, because the way it's split up over there, when I remember when we went over there, is you've got obviously your individual farmers and different, like over in specifically in China, they have the different cities and regions where they have different kinds of farming, right? Fish farming might be predominantly here, where this type of farming is predominantly in this region. And then you've got different operators that are in charge of, whether it's government or committees that are in charge of kind of helping set the tone and manage that. So it sounds like one of the business model approaches you're taking is going to this, like, let's say this region, saying, okay, let us help you, and here's how we would do it. Right. And are you guys in?
What we do is we provide the technology, we provide the equipment, the hardware, the training, and then really have the villages, each village or each little community that they have control over their own land, decide who should be the operators of those equipment and devices with the training that we offer them.
Awesome. I'm going off of, or I'm not going off of my sheet here, just learning more about the agricultural technology out there. And this is going to be a loaded question. Do you believe there will be a point in time where world hunger is solved? And like, how do we get to that point in time? And again,
Well,
that's a very big question, but
it
I'm going
is
to
a
throw
big
it your way.
question. It is a big question, but then if you look at it, we already solved a huge part of the world hunger problem already. If you look at where we are today with 7 or 8 billion people on this planet, and it's unimaginable. Just several decades ago, we probably thought this Earth could take no more than 2 billion people, and now we're at 7 or 8.
Right.
And but having said that, I do think there's a limit to what we can do.
Sure.
That's still in a sustainable way to feed more people in a more efficient way. And I'm not sure, when that pivot point is going to be. And
Fair.
and luckily, we are still in a place where we can comfortably say that we have enough food. Just look at America alone. In the United States, we produce more food than maybe that can actually feed half of the world's population.
Yeah, no, all good points. And I think actually backtracking a little bit, at least in America, there's probably more of an opportunity to prevent food waste.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, how do we go about that? Right. Like, yeah, because I get mad I get mad. I get upset with my daughter lately because she goes through these phases where she's wants to, how kids are. They want to eat. They'll eat everything on their plate. And then all of a sudden they're in a phase where like you make them their favorite meal, right? Okay. Spaghetti's like, she loves spaghetti. Make her spaghetti. She'll pick at it. She'll leave half it on the plate. And it's just been getting under my skin lately because I'm like, okay, I know you're going to ask for food later, and the only place this food's going to go to the trash. So again, you see it in like little microcosms, like in your own home.
Right.
And you're like, okay, if we're doing this and other people are doing this, again, that's a whole different topic of like,
Yeah.
For sure.
yeah. I wanted to piggyback off of the question that you asked about, the favorite startup. He asked you, what was one of your favorite projects and why? And you said agriculture and talked about your drone project, which I've seen kind of firsthand, really, really neat. Some of the impact it can have over in Asia is just unbelievable. But going back to like startups in general and call it startups, call it founding a business, call it, starting a podcast like we're doing even. We had a really cool conversation, Hayden, at lunch, Leo and I did, about what we're doing here and kind of, the grand scheme of when you're starting a venture, what do you look for? And so I want to kind of dive in and pick your brain on that kind of topic.
Right. Really, it's very difficult to put a map out there and say this is sure win and that is a sure lose. It's almost like walking into the casino and you can't really say, hey, that table is my lucky table and the other ones is not, right? So for startups, what you've got to look at is a number of things, and it's part science, it's part art, and the art part is probably the more difficult one. The science part, you can always come up with all kinds of numbers and figures and be able to analyze them, put it on a map and put it on a chart and what have you. But then at the same time, what I just shared with you earlier at lunch is, you got to first start with the winning categories. And that's one of the reasons why I picked agriculture versus the other ones. Because if you look around the world where everything has been inflated, basically, you look at technologies, you look at automation, you look at internet information, and of course, a lot of us spend a lot of money or made a lot of investments in healthcare industries as well, and now education. Guess what's gonna happen next? With all the inflation going up, with everything that's been inflated in terms of valuation and all that, people sooner or later they're going to find out, hey, you know what? At the end of the day, all I need to survive on is just food.
Yeah.
And food, it comes from agriculture. And how do we make sure agriculture continue to
Flourish.
develop and flourish in a way that's sustainable? That's more important. If you go to the markets today and you see a category that's called what's it called, non-GMO, right?
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, a lot of the products. One of the reasons why we were able to partially address the world hunger issue is the GMO.
Sure.
We genetically modified a lot of products and produce and make them produce more rather than using the technologies that I was referring to keep them healthier. And so that's one of the reasons why I think this category is probably going to be the next category. We already see people, especially the Chinese astronauts, bringing seeds up to the moon and try to see if there's a way for us to grow plants out into space and be able to continue to feed our Earth. I think the problems will be solved at one day, and there will be more innovations coming out of this area, and people are going to pay more attention to the food that they eat, the food that they take in, because that ultimately is going to dictate your health eventually.
Couldn't
Right.
agree anymore. And Cole and I have talked about that on a couple of recent episodes.
Yep.
What you put into your body is fuel for life.
Exactly.
And if you're putting in the
Yes,
wrong
it is.
stuff, it could have some serious, consequences with your body. And ultimately, it could end up leading to death.
There you go.
Yep. I got more questions, but I didn't know if you wanted to keep.
There's one more thing, and then we can flow into those because from knowing, and I mentioned this to you, Hayden, and one of the things I've heard you say, Leo, and I kind of want our listeners and I want to understand more is you keep coming back to this art, this, and you've said this to me for years. Actually, you've several times as a mentor and as a business partner of mine in the past, you've made the comment that there's this part that's analytics, there's this part that is data driven and looking at market reports and looking at yields of certain industries, and there's this part of starting a business or being successful in business that is an art form. And my question to you is like, what about it is an art form, and is that something that you can as a wannabe entrepreneur, wannabe is a bad word. What's the right word I'm looking for? Aspiring. Yeah, I don't like the word as a wannabe. As an aspiring entrepreneur, or aspiring, business executive or investor.
Great question. The world is very interesting if we look at it. I mean, it's almost like a quantum physics in some way, right? If we simply observe it as a completely outsider, as a third party, we look at the Earth and we look at, just picture yourself as an alien and you come to Earth and you look at Earth, you'll be like, oh, this Earth is so strange. It's beautiful, but then it's also strange. It's weird, right? With America being, between 3 and 5% of the world population, but control a large
part of it, yeah,
part of the Earth and all that. And America produces a lot of food, and its people have problems with obesities and heart issues and all that. But then there's other parts of the world having famine, having hunger problem and all that. But you can't. The thing is, you're a part of it. Even if you're traveling to Earth as an alien, you come to the Earth and you look at it, it's so strange. But then you start getting involved, you be seen, then people will look at you and say, "Hey, here's an alien."
Right.
Come on, let's capture this alien and put it on a world tour, and you start changing things.
Right.
The thing is, you start changing things, and that's the piece that I was really referring to as the art piece, because while everything may be factual, everything may be just data, maybe just figures and numbers, but when you get involved, even when you actually only observe and you be observed at the same time, then you're actually bringing in a change agent to the whole thing. And when you bring the change agent into the whole thing, everything becomes unpredictable.
Yep.
Everything becomes, dynamic, fluid, and then you don't know what the outcome actually will be for you and for the people around you, or for the things that you're observing. It's the same thing as the venture capital industry as well. A lot of people say, "Hey, Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba, was sure to win." Well, how do you know he's sure to win? If he had not met with, SoftBank founder, and that's probably, it would be a completely different story. He would still be struggling trying to figure out how to do indexing of businesses on the internet, on Facebook, not Facebook, on Yahoo's China page. That was all he was doing.
Yep.
And when I met him for the first time,
Wait, you met?
yes, a long time ago, he had his staff actually call me and say, "Hey, would you like to get your company listed on my China Yahoo page?"
Wow.
And I said, "How much would it cost me?" He said, 1,300 RMB which is about 200 US dollars. And I'm like, no way, I'm not gonna pay $100 to list my company on a nobody watch, nobody use
Right.
yellow page. Really, it was just yellow page, but it's put online, and that's it. So I still remember those days, but he managed to meet the SoftBank and got the investments, and continued to experiment. And one of the biggest things, of course, is not really Alibaba. Alibaba's success is not Alibaba itself. It's not even Taobao, which is the kind of like the Chinese equivalent of Amazon or eBay. It was actually the Chinese version of PayPal.
Really?
It's the Alipay. Alipay was actually the single most important success factor for Jack Ma. Nothing else. So how would you know? When you first met him, when I first met him, I was like, okay.
So you're speaking to the art form, like it was, yeah.
Exactly. You're changing things, and it's the same thing. He met SoftBank. SoftBank made that investment. Well, there's a lot of
Things,
more,
yeah,
a lot of
A
things.
lot of moving
yeah,
variables for sure.
Yeah, but simply put, it's kind of like that. You never knew who you were going to meet, what you were going to talk about,
Yep.
and what kind of change is actually being induced into the conversation, and what the outcome might turn out to be. And that's the art part, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like art is, I mean, it's almost just as important, or they're equally important, art and the science part, but it's much more challenging or harder to measure what
It's
goes
very
into the
difficult
art
to measure.
part.
Yep.
Yep, for sure.
I just love that.
Totally.
I've heard that from him several times. I'm like, it just makes so much sense to me. But that's also, like you said, the most challenging part, because you can go and pull
Right.
data and get industry reports and go, okay, this is why it's going to be a success. But then what you can't factor in, well, it's the X factor, the art factor. You can't making the right decisions at the times. There's no rhyme or reason why some decisions are made, some aren't.
Right.
Some things are gone after somewhat. So, anyways, it's super interesting. So I'll let you. I just want to ask that question, Hayden, but go ahead.
No, I think that was a fascinating question. I love the answer, Leo. And speaking of data, I mean, I've got a passion for data. I used to be an analyst at Kroger. I'm still at Kroger, but just not in data background or data role. But wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit more on like how important are analytics when starting up a company versus, okay, you're a well-established company. Does that question make sense, or do I need to reframe it?
I think you're asking how important analytics is for startups versus larger companies.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's a very, very tough question. I think analytics is always important, but the question is, how can the manager or the business owners use those analytics and those skills and training, or whether or not you actually need training. I still remember back in the 80s, we praised business leaders for their intuitions.
Intuition. Yep.
And what is intuitions, right? How do you quantify intuitions? Actually, that goes back to our previous question about art. I think a lot of it has to do with people having so many stories, having so many encounters in their life, that they sort of develop a set of experience or rules that they see as valid, and that came out to be intuitions. And today we call it analytics, or data analysis, or whatever you call it. But at the end of the day, though, people still choose to do the same thing if they were given the choices. Say, for example, to my son, if you try to wake him up, my teenager son, and if you try to give him a choice, would you like to sleep over time, and or you would like to get up strictly 6:30 in the morning, almost like a soldier, he would definitely choose to be
Sleeping in, yeah.
sleeping in his bed, and just as long as he could. So this is just natural, and that's what I always been telling my teenager boys too, as they grew up. And I said, hey, people, one big problem we have as human beings is we're always gravitated to take the easier options.
Right.
Yeah, whatever is easiest for us, we tend to do that, and that makes us so predictable, which is why we always say we repeat our mistakes in the history.
Right.
We do. If you look at it, we've been in wars time and over again, and why is that? People say, hey, why don't you just learn something from the history? This happened to us, thousands of years ago. But still people repeat that because we all resort to the easiest things that we can do in our life.
So are you saying that for this data and analysis, are you saying that companies aren't using it as much as they should?
Well, I think it's two ways. It's the fact that we're now using more and more data-driven decision-making tools in our business, in the business world today, definitely makes it makes ourselves a little bit more efficient than in the past, more productive than in the past. But then at the same time, if you go into the boardroom, let's say for example, and talk to the board of directors, people are still still sort of the same people as they used to be or as they were. They appear to be more informed with more data, with more reports being presented to them, but when it comes to, but they all come with some perspectives or some angles that they already have opinions about. You see what I'm saying?
Biases.
Exactly.
Yep.
You can call it biases, but then at the same time, you can also call it culture.
Sure.
Because we all grow up in an environment that we constantly feed from, right? We take advice. We hear our parents yelling at us, and screaming at us, not cleaning the table, and all of those kind of things. And we go to we work in a corporate environment, and we got people smearing at us and doing all kinds of things and doing a little trick behind you, and we all. And these are all environmental factors, and we all feed from them, and so that's actually contribute to the biases that we all come with, come in. So I don't know if there's a definite answer to your question,
No,
but
I think I from what I understood, the way I heard it was, like, it makes sense to me, and from the way I kind of grabbed that answer, Hayden, was that they're using more data and making more informed decisions, right?
Yep.
But it is kind of like a double-edged sword here, because if you're using more data, that's historical data, right, to drive your decisions, then are you actually changing that much?
That's a loaded question.
but it's kind of like this.
That's why I asked it.
It's kind of like this. Before internet, okay, our activities can be recorded or counted by maybe how many telephone calls you made, to what number, to who, and how many trips you make a day, from between your home and your business and other places. And then people can analyze your behavior and say, hey, this guy is a honest guy, never cheating on his wife, and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
But today it's internet. Now, does that change people's pattern? I doubt it. I mean, if people cheat online, right? If people do things, then they do online. Now, if you look at the data and she's, oh, this guy, we have all the data on the internet. Okay, we have everything. We see that this guy actually went on seeking.com and that whatever.
Yeah.
But does that make a difference? That's the fundamental question. Knowing all the data, would that change you? Would that change your perspective? I would have to say in a lot of cases, probably we're not changed by the data that we see or have access to.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, from my experience, I think a big problem actually is with all the data that's out there. If you're within like a large organization, like yes, you would think that you're going to get a lot more insights and action to improve the business. But I also see a lot of people misinterpreting the data, which
Yep.
is actually the opposite effect that you would want when you quote unquote, oh, I have all the data. But if you don't know how to interpret that data, or you think you're interpreting the data
Yeah.
correctly, but you're not, then you're gonna have, negative or adverse effects on your business. And I've seen a little bit of that.
Yeah, but then I have to say, data analytics do help in a lot of ways, particularly in correcting our erroneous
Sure.
views on certain things. Right?
Yeah.
If we say let's say the top executive says this, it's wrong to go into this to focus on this demographic, but then you present the data and say, hey, you know what, this demographic has a lot of wealth for you to dive
Right.
into.
You can slice and dice millions and millions of ways, right?
And that's actually also the role that we're playing as well as the Chinese Chamber of Commerce here in this region as well. A lot of people question and say, "Hey, Chinese Chamber of Commerce, are you guys, funded by the Chinese government?" We're not. We're funded by Kroger and a number of local businesses from the regions and nonprofit organizations as well. And the way we position ourselves is the same thing. We said, well, we can gather data and present data in ways that you probably did not think of in the past.
For
And
sure.
we're not trying to change the direction this country or this society or this community is taking. We're just offering you almost like the blind spot view and say, hey, it's kind of like when you're driving, changing lanes, and of course you look around, but there's always blind spots, and we're just offering that particular blind spot coverage for you and say, hey, here's what we see from the angle that we have. And you can continue to make a decision to drive down, remain in the same lane, change left, change right. That's the driver's decision. But we're just presenting the data so that you can have a different, or more comprehensive views.
It's a good way of putting it. Yeah. There's definitely multiple perspectives that you can bring to the table. Yeah. Love that.
You get some good ones on there.
Well, I think you touched on a couple of these, Cole, yourself. But let's see. So again, I think you kind of touched on this, but I think you've got previous experience investing in startups. Not necessarily being a quote unquote owner or founder, but like, what do you look at if you were let's say an angel investor and you wanted to invest in a company? Like, are there some common characteristics that you look
Right.
for?
Well, I touched upon this earlier. It's very important to be in the right category.
Sure.
Yeah. Because if you're in the wrong industry, if you start off in the wrong category, your chance of survival is going to be very different.
Yeah.
And so that's number one. Number two, we always look at people. At the end of the day, going back to my earlier comments about quantum physics, people is change factor. You induce a change with the people. It brings a lot of unknown uncertainties into the picture. And people is the largest variable in this particular case. So you got to look at the people and say, hey, how can I find the right people that will definitely bring this to a successful stage? I wouldn't call it end, because there's really no end to entrepreneurship.
Sure.
And the other thing then, of course, after looking at the people, you gotta look at a different time zone or time phases as well. And honestly, nobody can be winner all your life. Okay, you always have your prime time, and then you have your sort of getting aging and whatever reasons, and you get stubborn, or sometimes you get stubborn with your own success. and you start to lose, and it happens a lot. So you got to look at different timing and say, hey, is this the right timing for me to get involved? Is it the right timing for me to intervene? And people, I always look at it only get involved in two stages. Stage one is from 0 to 1 because you're creating something. You're creating a value. You see a value or you see a market that's underserved that needs to be served, and you come in with a solution. That's usually what we call it from 0 to 1. 1 may sound very little compared to 10,000 or 1 million, but between 0 to 1, that's infinitely greater than 0. So you go in there and say, hey, here are some great ideas and great opportunities. You go in there. That's the timing. And the other timings is when people go from 0 to 1, and then from between 1 to 100. Usually they struggle a lot. They go up and down. From 1 to 10, very easy. When you establish a business case and or a business model, and you go in and test the market, and you get moderate success, and you get so big on yourself, and say, hey, I can replicate this. I can make this happen in 10 different markets, and you go from 10 or 1 to 10, and then from 10 to maybe 20, 30 very easily. But then the problem is, how do you get to 100, right? And you got to test the market. And I have a lot of people approach me with very successful. Say, for example, when I was in Shenzhen, I got people approaching me and say, hey, I have this new recipe for tea, for tea drinks. Right? Boba tea. And then I said, well, okay, show me how good it is. And they said, okay, look at this. This shop, great. We opened another one, and we did another 10, and they were all hugely successful. And then I said, try 30, try 50, and see if you're as successful as you think. Because there's a certain cap to the market that this particular product can serve.
Totally.
And there's also this economy of scale when you start procuring and getting to a certain stage. But then at the same time, it comes with a lot of cost that you never thought of as well. When you grow from 20 to 30 to 50 to 100, then you have people. Keep in mind, going back to the people again, you have to recruit more people. And people, like I said, is the largest variable to your business model. When you don't manage them well, when you grow from 10 to 100, you fail. A lot of people actually fail miserably when they're trying to grow from 10 to 100. They do very, very well before 10, but then they fail miserably when they try to get to 100.
Okay.
So when you get to that point, now after you get past all the tests and you're still successful, then you get into what we call the high growth stage. And that is another great stage that investors should get involved, because you already tested yourself, products is good, markets is good, and you already go through your growth pains. Now you can actually easily replicate your model and grow from 100 to 1,000 to 1 million, and that's when investors should get in as well.
Awesome. I love that answer.
So basically, you're saying, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I understood as you're saying, you like to get in at the beginning stages, like when it's fresh, when you can have a lot of input.
Yeah, it's 0 to 1. Like I said, you're creating something. You're creating a value, and that value, no matter how little it may be compared to the future market size, it's still infinitely larger than 0.
And then, like you said, higher growth when you've already been established.
If you're a professional money manager, you would know. It's not about how much money you have; it's how much margin you can get in a given time limit.
I love that.
You can have the whole world at your disposal, but if you don't know how to use it, how to grow it, then it's nothing. It means nothing to you.
Right. I guess another thing to add on is it just depends too in terms of like the business, like how quickly do you want to grow, how large you want to grow, because some people might not want to scale to a very large,
Right.
future business.
Right. So that goes back to that, 0 to 1 and then 1 to 10 and to 100 and then 100 to a million. It's just it's all depends on a number of things,
Right.
whether or not you're the managerial type. Are you able to manage people?
Yep.
Like I said, people is the largest variables here. So are you able to manage that? If you're not, then probably it's better off you stay, with a smaller scale and be successful where you are and not worry about replicating the same business model again and again. But if you are good at large, complex human resources management system, then yes, you can definitely go for this, shoot for the sky.
Totally.
Yep.
Now, technology is super important, but I think there's also, negative consequences of technology. And we can keep this more general, or maybe we can keep it specific to, let's say, agriculture. What are some things that we as a society should be careful about in terms of technology?
Well, technology is first let me define what I think technology is.
Sure.
I've been, I've been in the VC industry and did some startups myself, and I got approached by a lot of people with a lot of different ideas. Okay, I can tell you that. And but in most cases, most of these people that approached me with a new technological innovation, they all claim how valuable it is and how unique it is and how nobody can get around it. This is the only way. Okay, this is the only way for technologies to happen, and therefore I hold this patent, I hold this trade secret, whatever it's called, and I'm going to capitalize on it and make a hell of profit out of this. And I always said, buddy, that's not technology to me. Okay, here's what I think technology is. Technology is an innovation. It is a new solution to maybe old problem or to new problems. But it's gotta be a solution that's cheaper than what it is today. Otherwise, it will never get adopted. It will never get done. It will never get implemented. And it doesn't matter how cool you think it is.
Right.
If it doesn't do things in a cheaper way and create a profit for people to actually adopt this new technology. So that's how I define technology. I don't look at it as a way of,
Doing something.
Exactly. It's not just a new way of doing things. And especially when it's a new way of doing things at a higher cost, I'm sorry, that's not technology.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not advancing.
Yeah, you can give me the whole world's fortune and I can come up with all kinds of new technologies. Okay.
Right.
But that's going to consume all of us. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So new technologies need to be new ways of doing things at a cheaper,
Less expensive.
less expensive way, so that there's new margins for people to actually benefit from. Right? That's the key, because if it doesn't produce that dividends, nobody is going to invest their time, resources, money, energy. Nobody does.
Or at least for not for a sustainable amount of time.
Right. Now, going back to the danger of new technologies, though. All right. And one thing, of course, Cole visited China with me several times. Well, one time, and but that was
Soon
long
to be
enough.
several. He's taking me back.
Yep.
They miss me.
And you notice that in China, there's cameras everywhere, and a lot of people say that's because China is a police state.
Everywhere. When he says everywhere.
Literally everywhere. Yeah, every corner. I actually, knowing China myself, I think a lot of it's just actually done by private companies. A lot of people didn't know that, and they thought it was the government, blah, blah, blah. Actually, it was a way for the technology people or companies to make money off of people. They look at how you drive, your driving behavior. If you cross the lane without flashing a light, or you cross the solid line when you're supposed to stay in the lanes, then they fine you. Okay, it's all money. It's all money.
Yep.
Okay, and that's exactly the same kind of things, because these technologies are not there to help us do things in a cheaper, safer
Manner.
way, and they are actually trying to exploit us, and that is the danger of technology. Now, would technology continue to be a great way to our society, a great contributor to our society? I think so. But the way I look at it is very different. I don't look at technologies as a replacement factor for our human labors or for our human intelligence, but I look at technologies as a way to at least find the baseline to sustain humanity and be able to maintain that, sustain that. And that is what I think the future of our technology should be focusing on. I'll give you one example. If you look at human civilization, right? What constitutes a human civilization? What do you think? How do you define this is a civilization versus a bunch of rogue
Right.
people, animals,
Anarchy, right?
On the planet? Well, when you say it's a civilization, there's got to be hierarchy.
Yeah.
There's got to be people on the top. There's got to be people at the bottom, right? And in the ancient times, what kind of hierarchy do we have? We have slaves at the bottom, a lot of slaves at the bottom, a little bit of a middle people, and then some elites in the top, like the kings, the queens. It's kind of like a beehives or ant colony, right? You have the queen and king or whatever. But if you look at today, or let's probably not so much today, but a couple decades ago in America or the United States boast about its middle class in the developed countries. We're now no longer a pyramid shape of society. We are a middle class, kind of like football shape or a diamond shape.
Right.
We have people at the top, very few, very high income people at the top, but we have a huge middle class, and then we have very few people suffering at the bottom. But the problem is that kind of society stable? You already see we're actually trending towards the other way, but going back to the pyramid again, right? After the several decades of globalization, what do we learn?
You tell me.
Okay. Well, one of the Harvard professor did a research, and he looked at all the data of the different household incomes around the world, and he charted them. He put all the data on the chart, and turned out that the Asian middle class families' income have seen between 60 to 80% growth over the past few decades.
Okay.
And if you look at the developed countries, all the different household income distribution, guess who matched that kind of growth?
Nobody.
Top 1%. What does that tell you?
The rich is only getting richer.
The rich is getting richer, exactly. And the middle class in the developed countries, particularly in the United States,
Not moving.
not moving at all. Their incomes...
So that gap is getting wider.
Exactly. The absolute income number, though, increased tiny a little bit,
Right.
but not matching the growth rate as the middle class Asia and the top 1% in the developed countries. That means the income gap in the developed country expanded,
It's widening.
widening tremendously. So what that tells you, the diamond shape or the football shape of societies is actually not that sustainable. It's not going to last forever. That brings us the problem. Okay, if in an ideal situation, you can even call it a utopia.
Yeah, I was going to say
kind
that
of situation.
Yeah.
don't we all want to be on the top?
Of course we do. Yeah. Right.
We all do.
Yep.
And what does that make our society then? If we are all on the top, a reverse pyramid.
Right, because it'd be fat on the top and small on the bottom.
Exactly. If everybody is given the fair chance to climb up to the top, we'll all be at the top, or at least a good number.
Right. So then nobody's really at the top, right?
No. Well, no. I'll get to that.
Okay.
So it will make our human society into a reverse pyramid.
Yep.
And reverse pyramid is not stable.
Right.
We all know that. But it could be attained if we have a bigger base of AI, robots, automation. See, that's where I think the future is going to be for our human civilization. Because wouldn't you want to be, living in a day where we no longer have to worry about hunger, famine, slavery, racism, all kinds of.
That'd be amazing.
It will be amazing, but it can be attained if we have rules that's written into the technologies and say, hey, these are the basic rules of our human society or of our human civilization, and these needs to be maintained by the technologies, by the automations, by the AIs.
So it'll allow the human race to move to the top or into the echelon.
Exactly, and then we continue to
that's a big idea.
To strive for higher aspirations and higher challenges that we are probably not known to us today. I don't know. Maybe it's the universe exploration, spatial exploration, and
I love that.
I don't know, but it can be attained. Like I said, if we turn the human society into an upside-down pyramid, but built on a larger base, having billions of robots.
Bring up the quality of life for everybody, but have some building blocks in place. So as society's moving up, right, you're putting a block in place. Like here's your stepping stone, and here's your stepping stone.
Yep.
I'm just mind blown over here. That's fascinating. I've never thought of something like that. Yeah, no, I see how that could potentially work. Going back to my question around some negative consequences with technology, I'm gonna just jump in and share some of my thoughts too with that. I think humans can get too dependent on technology. And you've discussed people are an important part of just life and the future of any type of business. But I think I'm starting to see more and more people not have the right soft skills or be able to interact with other humans because they're constantly looking at a screen in front of them. Would you agree that, and I don't even think that's really that debatable, but do you think that there could be a point in time where human beings are afraid to talk to other human beings because they're just used to some type of artificial world?
Well, I don't know. There's an answer to that.
Yeah.
It's probably something for us to explore.
Right.
And what the outcome is for human beings. To your point, yes, people are more glued to the screens that's right in front of them. Rather than going out and reaching out to people. But I still believe in humanity, and I still believe in the human interactions, like I said. And if we continue to have information and data at our own disposal in a more truthful way, and we'll be able to make decisions, well-informed decisions on our own, and take those decision makings on our own, rather than relying on the technology or some media outlets and say, hey, this is right, this is wrong, and rather we go out there and see for ourselves. And Cole went with me to China, and I have to say that took a lot of courage on his part, and
had a blast.
Took a little bit of an investment from my part, but hey, it was
it was a win-win.
It was well worth it.
Yeah,
it's well worth it. And then we got to see the people, how people are making a living over there, how they're approaching their day-to-day challenges and solving those challenges, and even today, I feel for the Ukrainian people and the Russian people too. Don't get me wrong. I mean, both regular people in Russia and Ukraine, none of them want the war.
Yep.
And it was really, if you ask a regular mom or in Russia or a regular mom in Ukraine, I don't think they want a war.
Right.
And but then problem is, we're being fed information, and sometimes we turn hostile to even Russians that are living here in the United States, and I honestly I think that's wrong.
Yeah. Do you think that humans are lazy in terms of making a decision on the information that's presented to them based on that question?
Earlier
was,
I think I already made that comment, right? We're all lazy, and we're
Yeah.
all trying to get the easiest decision. And one of the biggest problem or biggest challenge that I fear for human beings is we all resort to the easiest question, easiest answer, and that is no.
right.
Right? When we are asked to change, make a positive change in our life, and the easiest answer is no. I just want to keep it the same way as it is. I love sweet food, and I continue to crave for sweet food. And the problem is, before you know it, you got diabetic, and you got all kinds of problems. And same thing, I fall for it too. My son asked me, he said, "Dad, the only thing I'm going to ask you is to get out there and exercise for 1 hour every day." And I said, "Yes, I would do it." But would I ever do it? I don't know, if I ever get to do it. So
Right.
that's the same problem. We all resort to the easiest option
Sure.
in our life if we were given the choices. And that is the biggest problem, and that's what I said. Is the most predictable outcome of our humanity, and that is we always resort to.
That's our challenge, right? I think, kind of like to mesh those two ideas together, because I think the question you asked is, are we becoming lazier? Which is yes. Like, are we getting so much lazy and more like, I think the soft skills, I think you're right, the soft skills, because I was just thinking about in my profession, what I do, like what I get bombarded by salespeople or different softwares that are funneled to me, curated to me through different platforms that are like, hey, make your prospecting easier by doing this, or make your marketing easier by automating this, or never have to cold call again, or never. And it's like, okay, this is all ways for me not to interact with people, but it's feeding to that, like that oh, I don't have to like ever do something hard again, right? So that I can avoid, instead of like having to take on a challenge and say yes, I can avoid the decision altogether, right? I can totally ignore it. And I think that we're also getting inundated by, I definitely like some of the technology and some of the software and tools that are out there that they can make your life easier, right? You can get on an app like I did recently and get your laundry done because you don't like doing your own laundry. Like, I'm doing that now. I love it. It makes my life better because it's just laundry. I don't want to spend my time doing it. But I do think there is a downside to some of the advances or software and stuff we're being fed out there, that it takes away from like our need to even say yes to a thing, right? Like you're saying, okay, I can knows the easy route, but it's giving us a way. It's giving us a third option. I don't have to say yes. I don't have to say no. I can just automate it, and it's like, okay, so are you really moving forward in life and being better, or are you just avoiding the hey, I don't want.
It's like your dirty laundry, right?
Yeah.
And if doing dirty laundry yourselves teaches you something, and you probably learn something, gain something out of it. But if it's already taken care of by AI, by automation, so that you can focus on other things.
Right, there's certain benefits.
Exactly, there's certain benefits, and then you continue to think, hey, I'm so bored. What am I going to do now? And it's same thing as my children. My 5-year-old, 8 years old, they're already approaching me every time and said, hey, if I don't have the iPad, I feel so bored. But it's natural. Don't get me wrong. Is it bad? Yes, I do think it's bad. For the kids to be so addicted to the screens these days. But then at the same time, it challenges. But the key is what kind of challenges that you bring them to, so that they say, all right, what can be more fun than just gluing my eyeballs to the iPads? And you gotta think about it. You gotta present those new challenges to them and say, and open their eyes, open their minds, and say, hey, you know what? There are better things to do. Don't you enjoy it? Don't you like that? And why don't we experience that together? And that's the kind of things I think human beings ought to be bringing to ourselves.
Right, like I'm gonna automate this, but so then since that's not, I don't have to do that anymore. How do I backfill that time with something that's like beneficial to me?
Correct.
And again, like that point of like how many times I'm like, well, this is boring if I'm not like, like I found myself doing that recently. Like, oh, I'm just bored. It's like, because I put my phone down for 2 hours and I'm bored. Like that's sad. Like you know what I mean? When I was growing up, we had flip phones. You didn't get to
Right.
go scroll social media, right? That wasn't boring. So again, I think the technical advances, technological advances, and things that we're able to do can be great.
Yeah. Hopefully, something will come up that's beyond our imagination today, and humanity can come up with new challenges and new innovations that will solve problems, old problems, new problems.
Totally. I love that call out. Like 100 years, 1,000 years from now, people are going to be looking back, saying what we did was so archaic, like we do now for people,
Right.
100 or 1,000
That's
years
true.
ago. Yeah. So I love that as a reminder. Did you have anything else that you
Well, I
wanted?
wanted to. There's one thing I wanted to hit, and then I wanted to do a quick hitter because I think it's fun. But the question I had was, what is some of the best advice you've ever been given?
Ooh, I don't know about that. I really haven't given a whole lot of advice, just to be honest, because in most cases those advice are just being ignored. Like I said earlier, a lot of us are just human nature. We just resort to the easiest way to getting things done, and when you tell somebody, hey, there's a better way, and they say the first reaction would be, is it easy? Is it easier than the current one? Which is no. I'm not going to change anything. um, and I'll say this: my son, he's 19 years old, and he joined his mom and made a decision to move away and then join his mom.
Okay.
And then he said, "Dad, I don't remember a whole lot of things you told me." I said, "Okay, as you grew up, I said a lot of things." He said, "That's right, but I forgot about all of them. Only one, with the exception of one thing. One thing that you said to me that I remember to this date. And what is that? It's that you told me, first, take care of yourself before you worried about others."
Love that.
And
That's such a
and
good
the
one, isn't it?
and the analogy that I used was, when you're on the airplane, that's what the flight attendants always train you to do.
Right.
Put on your oxygen mask first before you help others.
Damn right.
And I said the same, and I used that analogy to my children, and that's the only thing they ever remember. And now they're saying the same thing to me. They said, "Dad, don't worry about me. Worry about yourself. Take care of yourself."
Flipping the script on you.
I was like, okay,
They're
that's
reversing it
probably
on you.
yeah, that's a good way, a very gentle way of saying, mind your own business.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, cool. I think that's awesome. That might be a good title for this.
Yeah.
Take care of yourself first. I like that. So I just want to say, I was gonna hit some quick hitters. I mean, I'll hit one because this is a really easy one for me. We'll see what you say. Do you like Skyline?
Well, I can do it. My tolerance is probably once a year.
Okay.
Okay, cool. I was gonna say Skyline or Gold Star, but do you like either?
There's no right or wrong answer.
There is a right answer.
I don't know.
They both are terrible. The honest answer.
Okay,
It sounds like.
Okay, so I guess here's a good one then. I'm trying to come up with it as we go.
Do you prefer day or night?
Well, I don't differentiate day and night. I don't know if I shared this openly before, but I have a sleep pattern that's very different from other people. I do 3 hour sleep cycles, and I do in 3 hours, chunks of 3 hours. If I get lucky, of course, I would do three. That means 9 hours sleep out of a night, but I don't. In most cases, I do one sleep cycle or two, 3 hours or six. And simply because the scientists already prove it. For you to have deep sleep, which is reflected by the rapid eye movement.
Yep.
It takes about between 2.5 hours to 3 hours, and 3 hours is abundant for people to actually go into the deep sleep mode and recover. The rest is just because we don't have anything better to do at night, so let's just go back to sleep. Go back to another sleep cycle, and that's it. And I noticed that when I was in high school, I had a hard time taking naps because it was mandatory for me back then to actually have a nap after lunch, and then before the afternoon school session starts.
For school,
again.
okay, it was
because
you were over in.
Yeah, I was.
Was it Jiaoqing?
Yeah, Jiaoqing.
Yeah.
And so at noontime, if I try to sleep, and I had to wake up, in maybe after 30 minutes or so, in order to go to the afternoon session of school, I find it more tiring for me.
Yeah.
And I wonder why. Later, I found out it was actually, either you take naps between 5 to 15 minutes, nothing more than 30 minutes, because once you pass that 30 minutes, your body tells you are now preparing yourself into deep sleep. But you got interrupted.
Yep.
And then you actually feel even worse than sleeping. And same thing happens when I was growing up, and we were told that, hey, kids should get 8 hours of sleep every night. And I said, okay, I'll make sure I get 8. So I go to bed at 10, let's say, and then make sure I wake up with an alarm 8 hours later.
Right.
I always felt terrible until I actually read that report. REM, rapid eye movement, actually happens between 2.5
and 3
hours and 3. And then I said, okay, I know why.
You've been doing this for a while.
Yes,
That's fascinating.
And it helps me a lot because when I wake up in the middle of the night time here, it's usually still afternoon in China or Asia time, and I would be able to handle a lot of emails, a lot of social media applications. People, reach me for certain advice or decisions, and I can actually still make the decisions before they go. They leave work, and so then I, if I need to, I can go back to another 3 hour sleep cycle, or I can just stay up the whole day with 5, 10, 15 minutes naps somewhere in between.
So is your schedule different every day, or are you doing 3 hours?
My schedule is different every day.
Wow.
Yeah. I never have I never tell myself, hey, I have to go to bed at 9 or at 12 or at thing. I never have to tell me anything. I just
Make sure you get in your 3 hour segments.
Yep. I make sure I have at least 3 segments every day. Usually I get 2. And sometimes if I'm lucky, I get 3. And that keeps me going all these decades.
Sounds like your competitive advantage.
It
You
doesn't
just
really
released
be.
a big secret. I've heard about that a little bit. I actually had I almost said a roommate. It wasn't a roommate, but someone that lived on the same floor back in college did something like that. And that was the first time I was ever privy to any information like that. But you wonder why that isn't more mainstream with society. As you mentioned, like they always say, oh, you got to get 8 to 10 hours of sleep, and it should be a consistent 8 to 10 hours of sleep. But like that might be an outdated paradigm.
I think so. I
Yeah.
think it's just because people have nothing better to do at night.
Yeah.
So when you wake up in the middle of the night, what are you going to do? There's nobody on this outside. There's nobody in the house, and if you walk around in the middle of the night, and people will even think you're a burglar.
Yeah, you're the creeper.
Yeah. So, but in my case, it's different. I got people.
You got things to do, Leo.
Things to do in Asia, and it's entirely night and daytime
Sure.
for us. So it's useful for me.
You want to try that challenge?
I'm seriously thinking about it. Okay, I remember when we were over a few years ago. We were in Asia. It was the overnight train we were taking from Beijing to Qingdao.
Yes.
And I remember because it was literally an overnight train. You start at 9 o'clock and you get there at 6:30 or 7 in the morning. And I remember like everybody's trying to sleep, and I walk out. And it's like 3 a.m, and obviously I'm having a trouble because like I just flew over. I think you'd already been there for a couple of weeks, and you're used to like making this trip 20 times a year or something like that. So I went out there, and he's like sitting in the hallway. He's playing a game on his phone, and I'm like, "Are you going to sleep?" He's like, "No, I usually don't sleep." I'm like, "What are you doing?" And then he told me about this, and like this has been, I mean, a regular thing. I remember at some point I'd get like emails from him at like 3 or 4 in the morning. I'd be like, literally like consistently, because and I was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot." Like Leo's like an absolute animal. Okay, the dude doesn't sleep.
No, I sleep. It's just that, with that 3 hours patterns, it makes it a lot easier for me to have completely flexible schedule rather than having to, call it a day at night and all that kind of thing.
Do you feel you wake up like with more, like do you come out of that sleep more energized and like a full?
Well, yes, absolutely. Because every time I wake up exactly at about 3 hours mark,
Right,
rather than somewhere between 2:45 and 3 hours. So I always get fully recuperated, with
Quicker.
that kind of yep.
When's the last time that you've slept a consistent 6 or 8 hours? Has it been years?
Oh, it's must been years.
Wow.
Because during the pandemic, there are a lot of things to do.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
I don't know why the pandemic. While everybody's just kept at home, then either it's your little home project, home improvement projects, or other things. Just keep you up at night. And I've been
busy as a bee.
yeah, I've been busy. Yeah.
I would have never expected getting that out of a quick hitter, That's an
I know.
awesome.
But one thing though, one prerequisite is you need to be able to get into sleep very fast, and that's another trick. And I can share the other tricks, another secret, another time.
Yeah,
We need to have Leo back to hear
you're
that
saying
trick.
like, yeah, because if you say I'm gonna do 3 hours and the first 45 minutes are falling asleep, then you only got 2 hours 15 minutes roughly, right?
I'm gonna bet it has to do something with removing yourself from like technology or like some type of mental.
No, it didn't have anything. Yeah, but it does require a little bit of a meditating, so to speak.
Okay.
Hang upside down by your feet for wait till the blood flows to your brain.
Like a vampire.
Yeah, he's got one of those reverse tables. He just straps himself to it and hits a button.
Oh man.
You're stretching your imagination.
Yeah. Well, no, I think that's all we had. I can't think of. I think this has been such a fun episode, Leo.
Yeah, thank you.
You continue to educate. That's what I love about this. I feel like you continue to educate and bring value and bring like a ton of. I mean, like you hang by your feet before you go to sleep, like that. No, we really appreciate you coming on here today. It was fantastic.
Yes, thank you. This
Honored
was
to be here.
very insightful. Learned a lot of new stuff, and I want to have you back on if you'd want to come back on
Sure.
sometime.
I know we can keep going. We're at over an hour into this, but so I'll wrap it up. Leo, thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you.
Listen to our listeners. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Unscripted Exchanges. We appreciate all the support, the feedback, the engagement. Please keep it coming. We've got some of our merch up here. Actually, you can see above. That is for sale on our website. So feel free to jump on there at unscriptedexchanges.com and grab some of that stuff. We'll have more designs and material coming. And just want to say thank you once again, Leo. Thank you, Hayden, for being an awesome co-host. Jimmy, good job today. Did a good job. I'll give you the knocks. Just don't look at me, Jimmy. Leo, you don't know about the guy in the corner is our production guy. So.
He's almost invisible.
Yeah,
That's how good he is. You don't even know he's here. Thanks, everyone. We really appreciate it. And tune in to next week's episode. God bless.
Thank you.